Today, Victor had a good day. 2 days of long journeys and the destination is almost upon him. By evening, he would unload the truck and be on his way home. His boss had promised him a bonus for urgency, and he needed the money now. If it weren't for the mortgage on the flat, Victor would never have worked as a truck driver. He was making good money as a taxi driver, but his wife Natasha is pregnant with twins. So they took a loan for a bigger flat and now they have to pay back the interest to the bank. The payments are high, so he had to switch to a truck. Even though his wife was not happy about it, this time Natasha demanded that he should not go anywhere. Her feminine heart was telling her something. She was terrified for her husband. But Victor said, "What can happen to me? Do not make things up." But trouble began as soon as he arrived at the garage. It turned out that his partner was sick. He would have to go alone. Victor freaked out at first but quickly calmed down. It was not the first time he had to drive alone. It was not the most extended trip. The route was crowded. He could sleep in a car near a roadside cafe for just one night. At least he was well paid and would not have to share it with his partner this time. Victor went without a partner, and well worth it. There were only 3 hours left on the road, and he will deliver the cargo. And the way home is always shorter. It's a quick ride, and he can calm down a nervous wife. She should visit her mother more often, but she's an orphan. Her parents are dead. Victor used to joke that he was lucky to get a wife without a mother-in-law, but now he realizes that a mother-in-law would be a good thing now. Victor was raised by his great-aunt, who is now almost 90 and unable to help. Victor helps her himself. He was thinking affectionately of his aunt Lilia, who had raised him and barely had time to brake sharply. A confused older woman in a white shawl stood on the road 3 meters away. Victor did not understand. Where had she come from? The highway was fast and loaded with cars, and she decided to cross the road here? A kamikaze! He got out of the truck and went to the old lady to scold her. The older woman smiled guiltily and said they needed help. Victor frowned and wanted to pull out his wallet. He thought a strange place for her to beg, but life sometimes makes you do even worse things. He had already pulled out the banknote and held it to the old lady, but she refused and said she and her husband needed a ride home, but no one wanted to drive them home. Then Victor saw an older man sitting on the side of a road. "We were on our way to the market to sell milk, and on the way the older man felt ill. He had a heart problem." Victor thought about it. The village they were going to was quite far away. If he went, he would not be able to deliver the cargo today. That meant that he would not get a bonus for the speed. He did not want to lose the money, but he felt pity for the elderly, and this older man was not feeling well. He would instead take the older man to the hospital, but he asked to go home. So be it. The man helped the old couple get into the truck, and after 300 meters, he turned onto a narrow country road. Those older adults must be someone's parents. There was nothing he could do for his parents. They passed away early. At least he could do something for them. On the way, Anna kept thanking Victor, and her husband, Matvey, even cheered up a little, and when their house came around the corner, he smiled. He said, "Come on, son, let's go and have some tea." Victor looked at his watch hopelessly and agreed. He had lost an hour and a half anyway. No hurry anymore. The warehouse would close in an hour, and there would be no time to deliver the cargo regardless. They were drinking tea in a small, clean kitchen. Anna treated her guest with delicious apple jam, and when it got dark, she invited Victor to stay with them for the night. Victor immediately agreed. It was much better than looking for a place to spend the night on the highway. Victor enjoyed his breakfast in the morning, shook hands with the older man, and drove off. All the way he thought warmly of the sweet married couple and smiled, thinking of his Aunt Lilia. On his arrival, he would have to visit her. Victor turned into an alley on his way to the warehouse and immediately found himself at the end of a huge waiting line. A line of trucks stood close to each other, with angry drivers walking around. Victor asked what had happened. Another driver replied a petrol truck had exploded yesterday around 7 p.m. All the warehouses were destroyed. Now they were deciding where to take the cargo. Victor got angry and hit the steering wheel. Suddenly he froze, looking out at the windscreen. 7 p.m. The man stared in horror at the driver walking around. "Were there any victims?" he answered angrily. "What do you think? I told you several hangars were destroyed." Victor got out of the car and sat down on the ground, covering his face with his hands. When he drove back, he would be sure to stop by the house of that elderly couple to say thank you for saving him. If he were not giving the elderly couple a ride, that would be precisely when he would be in the warehouse unloading the truck. But he had another reason for stopping by. He had left his talisman lighter on their kitchen table. a beautiful personalized lighter he had never parted with, though he rarely smoked. But when he stopped outside their house in the village, he was disappointed. The house had no lights. The small courtyard was overgrown with weeds, and the front door was boarded up. He did not understand anything. He could not have gone the wrong way. This was the house, the old oak tree, and there was only one road here. Victor is an experienced driver. He understands these things, but he saw everything with his own eyes. He sat in the cabin, got out, and walked carefully around the house. It was apparent. The house had long been abandoned. Victor began to think he was going mad. But as he peered through the kitchen window, he was cold with horror. On the table, covered with a thick layer of dust, was his box of cigarettes and a silver lighter. There was no doubt he had been here yesterday. He climbed through the window like a thief, took his stuff, and ran to the car. He did not believe in mysticism, but the place seemed scary. It was urgent to get away, but he could not go fast enough on the country road, and troubling thoughts haunted him. When he saw a bicycle driver on the street, Victor decided to clear the situation. He asked the red-headed man if he was from around here. The man nodded yes. Then Victor introduced himself as an old acquaintance and asked about the older adults living in that house. He hadn't been there for years, and when he came, he saw the house abandoned. Maybe they had moved away? The boy understood who they were talking about and answered Matvey and Anna had been dead for 5 years. It was a scandalous case. They had been hit by a drunk driver on the roadside when returning from the market. They had a foster daughter, very young. She had difficulty coping with the grief, and after the funeral, she left the village without telling anyone where she was going. Victor wiped the ice-cold sweat from his forehead. Could the boy be talking about other older adults? There was only one way to find out, and he dared. After asking the guy where the cemetery was, Victor drove there. He didn't know how he could find the right graves. He didn't even understand why he was doing this, but he went to the cemetery. Half an hour later, Victor stood inside the long, unpainted fence with 2 iron crosses. He saw the pictures pinned to the crosses and grew cold with horror. They were familiar faces, a little younger than the elderly couple he had picked up on the roadside, but they were them. And the elderly couple's last name was Knish, his wife's maiden name, Natasha. Natasha was originally from just this area. Victor ran towards the exit but did not see his truck. The man stood at the edge of a field overgrown with daisies and looked around perplexedly. Maybe he went to the wrong exit? He was about to look for the truck, but he began thinking about it. What if it was Natasha's parents? She had mentioned their names, but Victor had forgotten. But even if it wasn't them, didn't the older adults deserve someone to honor their memory? Half an hour later, Victor walked to the fence again with a bouquet of daisies from the field. Carefully placing the flowers on the graves, he crossed himself and strolled towards the exit. This time he walked out precisely to his truck. He drove slowly home. He would be sure to ask his wife about her dead parents and return here again to visit his saviors. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.